Across planet internet, self-appointed scientists are filming outrageous acts of science. These internet heroes are doing bizarre experiments, making extraordinary inventions, and creating amazing scientific stunts. We've gathered a team of top science brains to analyze just how they do it, why they do it, and choose the very best. It's science, but not as you know it. So stand back and don't even think about trying this at home. No, seriously. Welcome to the greatest hits. We've asked our scientists to pick their ultimate clips from season 2. With a huge selection of insane stunts, mind-blowing experiments, and crazy inventions to choose from, they found the absolute cream of our video crop.
To take hundreds of clips and get them down to 20, this really is the greatest videos of all time.
The best videos are when science and stupidity all come together.
I'm looking for people that risk it all.
Give me some science!
So now we know what it takes to be a greatest hit. It's time to start pedaling for number 20. Meet our favorite British inventor and stuntman, Colin Furze, who managed to top his homemade wall of death with our number 20 greatest hit.
Okay, let's build a massive pulse jet. What's the most sensible thing to do now? Put on those old bike!
Behold the Jet Bike, a 10-foot-long liquid propane-driven pulse jet engine, bolted on an old bike. We tracked Colin down to once again meet the man behind the machine.
In a way, they're kind of useless. They don't produce much thrust. They just get hot and make a lot of noise. But there's something about that which is just amazing. So we built this Jeffing Great pulse jet, and I had this bike laying around, so why not put the two together?
Why not indeed? And 2 million of us watched Colin push his jet-propelled bike to over 50 miles an hour. So, how does it work?
He's built the simplest type of jet engine, which is called a pulse jet engine. It is literally a bent tube.
So you have 3 basic components. You have your exhaust, and then you have your combustion chamber, and then you have your intake.
The fuel is introduced into the combustion chamber. That fuel seeps out through the exhaust and he lights it.
Whenever the fuel combusts, it expands rapidly. But after it's burnt all the fuel, it goes so far it actually creates a low pressure in the combustion chamber.
This means air from the air inlet is going to get sucked in, gas is going to be allowed in from his throttle control, and also air is going to be sucked back via the exhaust pipe. However, since the exhaust pipe is a bit longer, some of those hot combusted gases are still trapped in that pipe, so when they come back, they're still hot. They will fire the next one, and you just get this continuous rolling combustion, which gives the jet the thrust.
This thing is all about the noise, the heat, and the contraption that it is. And that's the fun, that it is so unfit for purpose that it's just brilliant.
We've jetted off to a good start for our countdown. Our scientists are always impressed by animals that have mastered nature, like the dog that scored our 19th spot. This is 4-year-old Ozzy from England. He walked his way into our greatest hits on a tightrope.
This start's pretty straightforward. It's a dog with 2 paws on the rope. Not that impressive. And suddenly it leaps up.
It's an amazing acrobatic balancing dog.
Who doesn't want to see a dog balancing on a tightrope?
And then it stands up. How can you balance on 2 legs on a rope while being a dog?
Good point. Scientists, speak, speak.
This is a very difficult task for a dog. They don't have any of the anatomy that tree-dwelling animals have. Longer limbs and gripping hands like primates or prehensile tails. This dog doesn't have any of those things. A bit like us, when we balance on a tightrope, we need to distribute our weight as far away from the centre of gravity, or the centre of the pivot point, as we possibly can. And Ozzy is doing that by sticking his tail out as far as he can.
He really has to make a lot of tiny adjustments to keep himself aligned, his center of mass above the rope. He's at a real disadvantage, but yet he pulls it off. I don't think there's a lot of dogs in the world that can do this.
But just how has Ozzy barked in the face of the laws of biology and physics to perform his spectacular balancing act?
The owner has firstly got an intelligent breed. It's a working dog stock and they tend to be on the brighter side. And secondly, he's trained him with a series of rewards. He's conditioned him.
So from Ozzy on a rope to an Aussie in a tank. We're in Australia to meet our number 18 greatest hit, Peter Gleason.
How
How long has this man been in this tank? You can see his hair and his beard are so long.
Long enough to realize he can make waves.
I am not sure whether these waves are powered purely by the majesty of his beard, or whether it's just simple physics.
So, do majestic beards make magnificent waves, or is there a better explanation?
Essentially, Peter has created a standing wave.
He makes one splash right in the middle. That ripples out as a circular wave. It then hits the circular wall all at the same time, gets reflected back in unison, and all converges right back in the middle.
The thing that he is doing brilliantly is getting the timing right.
He's moving up and down in time with the waves. And gradually, through this process of resonance, he's building up a bigger and bigger standing wave.
Peter's homemade wave machine certainly made a splash with our experts. It's also a valuable lesson about escaping a circular water tank.
If I'm stuck and there's a hole in the top and I can't reach it, that's what I should do. I should push up and down on the water until it forces me up out through the top. Maybe that's what he's trying to do. He's trying to escape.
Cute animals are all over the internet, but not typically in frog form. This is the fearsome Namakwa rain frog, who squeaked his way to over 7 million hits.
What's that doing? How's that evolved? I've got a lot of questions about that.
So why is this frog like some freaky squeaky?
This frog is making a distress call, and it's likely that the camera it's seeing as a predator, so it's making this noise to alert other animals in the area and to potentially try and frighten a predator.
At the scale of the frog, that's probably a very large, terrifying noise it's making. At the scale of a human being, it sounds like a squeaky toy.
It's also puffing itself up as large as it can be. It's about 20% larger than its normal size when it's in distress, and that could potentially stop a snake from swallowing it.
If he knew that his efforts to be incredibly tough and strong and big and threatening and powerful were being labelled as cute, he'd be pretty insulted, frankly.
Nothing gets our experts' blood boiling more than explosive science.
Something blows up, it catches your attention, it's exciting, your adrenaline is rushing.
Like our number 16. We're in Croatia with Christian, Kriso, Zlatko, and friends for some rocket science.
This is the best chemical reaction I've ever seen done in a field.
It's amazing.
And incredibly dangerous. Don't try this at home. So far in our countdown of the finest web experiments, we've ridden on a pulse engine, dipped into outstanding waves, and balanced with biology. But join us after the break as we take our greatest hits to another level on Outrageous Acts of Science. Welcome back to the very best of Outrageous Acts of Science. We've already witnessed some of mankind's and animal kind's greatest triumphs. But as we blast into our top 15, the hits get bigger and better. When Jeff Meckley traveled to the volcanic islands of Vanuatu in the South Pacific, he decided to climb inside an active volcano.
Jeff is clearly the ballsiest dude of all.
After 2 months of waiting for the perfect conditions, Jeff went down to the lava lake's 100-foot ledge.
It was like a hurricane of hot air, and it pretty much felt like I had my hand in an oven.
His first attempt lasted just 6 seconds before he was driven back by the extreme heat.
Well, the heat that he's got to withstand is somewhere between about 700 and 1200 degrees centigrade.
And for us Americans, that's up to 2,190 degrees Fahrenheit.
Which is, to be more accurate, absolutely boiling.
So Jeff armed himself with a homemade silver suit.
That's how we do things down here. We make it ourselves.
He also added a tank of air.
With the breathing apparatus, I had 40 minutes of air, and I used every bit of it.
Then he filmed this scene that scorched the internet with over 3 million hits.
It looks like all of my wildest dreams.
Erupting volcano is like looking back to the beginning of time. It's like the heartbeat of the Earth.
So what is it about Jeff's silver suit and air tank that gives him 40 minutes next to a lava lake?
There's 3 basic forms of heat transfer: induction, convection, and radiation.
And what Jeff is really experiencing is the radiation.
What he did is he built this aluminized suit that would reflect most of that radiation. So instead of absorbing it into his body, he reflects it away, and he could actually survive next to this cauldron of hot, boiling rock.
So the silver suit reflects heat. But this looks like a nasty place. There must be other dangers.
The volcano is giving off a whole load of toxic gases that he needs to make sure he doesn't end up breathing in, otherwise they will kill him.
Thank God for people like Jeff. If only to get these amazing shots. You know, where would we be without these crazy, brave New Zealanders?
Yes, where would we be without our web-based pioneers, whose disregard for their own safety furthers our scientific understanding? I got a brain freeze! And our number 14 is another cool example.
What I love about this video is that it's a perfect example of thermodynamics, and it illustrates really well heat flow from an idiot into a heat sink.
It's working. This is Matt, a.k.a. Ant, licking a frozen pole with his friend at their local high school in New Jersey.
Have they seen Dumb and Dumber? Don't lick cold lampposts.
Yeah, the experiment may have been a bit more successful than they anticipated. Yeah, that's definitely painful. But why was Ant in such a sticky situation?
Metal is a very good thermal conductor, which means that it can take heat out of Ant's tongue really quickly and much faster than blood can supply more heat. This means that you end up cooling down the tongue very, very rapidly, and you end up freezing the saliva that's coating his tongue, and this sticks his tongue to the pole. Now, to get his tongue back off, he's got two options. If he's got some warm water, he could pour that on, and that would melt the frozen saliva, the frozen cells, and then he'd be able to take his tongue back off. But he hasn't got this. So he's left with the option of just simply ripping his tongue off and leaving behind those frozen cells on the pole.
And Ant completely earned his place at number 14. Meet Basa Anderson from Norway, the world's most scared man, according to more than 3 million people on the internet.
I get surprised sometimes here. It's very easy to scare me because I'm in my own world.
So what's behind his extreme scarediness?
My first memory of being scared was birds.
Oh, Basa, surely he can control his terror. Or has his dark encounter with a bird scarred him for life?
This is the classic fight or flight response that we see. It starts with the frightening stimulus and ends with a chemical reaction involving the heart rate going up, blood pressure going up, your breathing gets quicker so that you can deliver oxygen to your muscles, and your senses just sharpen all round.
His pupils will dilate right out so that he's getting more information from it, but at the same time, he's pushing his legs away from this thing as much as he can, and he can do that because he's got all this extra blood rushing through those muscles. It buys you time when you can use your human brain to click into the rest of this and decide, is it dangerous? Is it just a friend playing a prank? Is it just a spider? Or do I actually need to keep running that way?
The reaction that Basa shows is entirely unconscious. He has no control over it whatsoever. And that's why his colleagues can trick him time and time and time again. He can't learn not to be this way.
So for showing us the brain science behind being scared, Basa made our countdown. Stick around for more of our greatest hits on Outrageous Acts of Science.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Planet of the Apes.
This is Am Bam. Now, he might look like a typical gorilla, but one day he did something special. Something that drew over 3 million views online. Yes, Am Bam decided to go for a stroll, biped style.
This is really freaky. Do gorillas normally walk like that?
Well, Am Bam does.
It does look a bit fake, even.
Fake, you say? Let's ask Am Bam's keeper, Phil Ridgett.
It's quite quirky. I mean, most gorillas don't walk around upright or just on their legs. I think people thought it was someone in a suit, which I guarantee it wasn't. It's Am Bam. He does do that.
So Am Bam's not a faker. But wait, does that mean we're witnessing evolution at work?
Ordinarily, a gorilla would walk quadrupedally, so they will have all 4 limbs on the ground, and they have pads on the backs of their knuckles, so they do this knuckle walking. In the wild, they do walk upright on 2 legs, but it is rare. It's about 5% of the time, and it's usually in a display of dominance that they'll do it. But it takes a lot of energy. It's not efficient for them to walk around like that.
They have much shorter hind legs, so their torsos are very tall. It also puts their centre of mass very high, which makes them less balanced in general.
So if it is hard for a gorilla to move around on 2 legs, why does Am Bam do it?
One of the reasons that human beings, we believe, got upright and started walking around is so we could carry stuff. We could do this with our hands. And it looks like this gorilla has discovered the same thing. If I stand up like this, I can carry my log or my banana, the others that he can see further. I mean, if he's the guy that seems to always know when the food's turning up, then, yeah, that's gonna make you an important gorilla.
And that's why Am Bam walked into the number 12 spot on our greatest hits countdown.
Question is, if you get a cloth dripping wet without gravity and you wring it out, what's going to happen?
Taking our greatest hits out of this world, the internet's favorite astronaut, Chris Hadfield, took up a challenge from 2 Canadian 10th grade students.
I love the fact that something so simple can be turned into such an interesting experiment just because it's carried out in space.
For me, this is totally unexpected. I didn't think that it would stay so close to the washcloth. I thought that the drops of water would have flown around.
The water's all over my hands. In fact, it rings out of the cloth into my hands.
So what in the name of space station science is going on here?
On Earth, when you wring out a washcloth, you're applying pressure to it, and that pressure is pushing all the water molecules outside of the fabric of the washcloth. And when you do that, gravity takes over, grabs them, and pulls them to the ground.
On the International Space Station, that water is effectively weightless. It doesn't fall to the ground. Instead, it just hovers around the washcloth. Weird.
And the reason that water doesn't just fall off or go other places is a thing called surface tension. Basically, water molecules tend to want to stick together due to the opposing charges. And because there's no other force, such as gravity, trying to pull them away, all they're going to do is just spread out but continue to stick to each other.
Proof that even wringing out a washcloth is interesting in space. We're at the halfway point in our countdown of the greatest hits. We've learned about thermodynamics, washed with surface tension, and watched a man master Mother Nature. But as we fire our way into the top 10, our next greatest hit raises the stakes by getting up close and personal with a cactus. This is a cactus with over 30,000 spikes. And this is Jeffabelle, who's wearing nothing but boxing gloves. Your move, Jeffabelle. This ought to be good.
Green means good.
I mean, who in his right mind would jump directly to fight with a cactus?
Maybe someone who must not have known what would happen.
I hope the biologists have got some good biology to explain on this clip, because it was horrible for me to watch.
So, how did the poor cactus defend itself against the flying Aussie?
Cactus spines are modified leaves. If you think about a normal leaf, there's a lot of surface area there, a lot of chance for water to evaporate. The cactus leaf is just the opposite of that. It's very compact, it's very sharp, it's not letting water out, and of course this is exactly the function it has to provide in the desert where there's very little water.
The other advantage to having the spines is that it does protect the cactus plant from other animals that might like to feed on it and perhaps access some of that nice juice that's inside them.
But these teenagers aren't after cactus juice. They're after the sweet, sweet nectar of internet glory.
These things are sharp. They hurt. They are sort of beyond a needle. They're like small knives.
Please don't try this at home. With a volcano visit falling out of our top 10, be sure to join us after the break, where our hits will shock, amaze, and leave you wondering,
how did you do that?
Welcome back to our greatest hits. So far, we've seen a gorilla walk like a man behave like a chicken, and a cactus act like a a cactus. It's time to continue our hits with some insane stunts in Lodrino, Switzerland. Bert's camera possibly has the greatest job in the world. He designs and flies miniature radio-controlled helicopters for model companies. When this video of Bert doing his astonishing stunts landed on the net, it scored more than 300,000 hits and counting.
The skill involved in this is truly unbelievable.
My favorite move is when the helicopter comes crashing down really quickly, very close to the ground, and then he pushes it backwards and he saves it from his deep dive.
We asked Bert what it takes to be the greatest.
For somebody to learn to fly the way I do, it would take anywhere between 3 to 10 years. My favorite moves are the tic-toc. And another favorite maneuver is what we call the funnel, which is basically a tail-down inverted circle.
So how is Bert pulling off these sick moves?
So the first control that Bert is using is the main rotor blade. Firstly, it provides lift. The next thing it does is it can actually be tilted forwards and backwards. And by tilting it, you can make the helicopter go forwards, or tilt it in the opposite direction. You can push the air out and it will go backwards. Now, the other thing is, there's something called a swash plate.
This allows the helicopter to tilt in all directions.
So the main rotor gives the helicopter lift and moves it backwards and forwards. So what does the tail rotor do?
Without the tail, the helicopter body would just spin around, and so this rotor blade at the back keeps it nice and level.
So could a full-sized helicopter perform these sweet moves?
The G-forces that would be experienced by a real pilot would be way too strong to be sustainable. Secondly, we have the power-to-weight ratio, which means that for a small helicopter, the engine is much more powerful.
Bert, from mastering miniature physics, we salute you. Our expert search for the most electrifying experiments on the web led them to our number 8. This is Angus, Kent, Carly, Matt, and Joel from Australia. With the help of science teacher Angus, they decided to find out what happens when you touch an electric fence.
This clip made me laugh so much. But it does just go to show you probably shouldn't mess with electricity.
So why are all 5 of them electrocuted simultaneously?
Electric fence is quite simply a battery, and a battery, of course, has 2 terminals. One terminal is the wires that you see as the fence, and then what they do, they get these stakes and they put them in the ground, and that makes the ground the other terminal. So if you stand on the ground and touch the electric fence, you're completing the circuit, and hence you get a shock.
Yeah, but why are Angus, Kent, and Carly not getting shocked right now, while Angus touches the electric fence?
Electricity will only flow if there's a path to ground. When those first initial few people touch the electric fence, they're standing on plastic chairs, so there's no path to ground.
They're standing on insulating materials which don't conduct electricity, and this prevents a circuit being formed between the ground and the fence.
It's only when Joel takes off his shoes and holds the hand of the last person, then the circuit is complete and a huge pulse of electricity can flow through them all.
Electricity can be lethal, so please don't try this at home.
The reason these guys aren't more seriously injured is the fact that the electric fences deliver their electric charge in a high voltage but low current short pulse. Now, if you compare this to mains electricity, that is high current and continuous. And the thing that causes damage during electrocutions is the amount of current that flows through you.
And from one shocking discovery to another, if you're squeamish, you might just want to look away. After the break, more outrageous acts of science.
Oh, God!
This is gross.
This handsome fella's a flesh-eating botfly larvae. And Vanessa is on the menu.
Oh, God!
Returning from vacation in Belize, Vanessa realized she had an unwelcome guest in her head.
This is gross. She had a barfly living in her head for a month.
Oh my God, I don't know.
So how in the name of science did this baby botfly end up chewing on Vanessa's head?
The female botfly will lay her eggs on a vector, something like a mosquito or a tick. And when that attaches to a mammal, The warmth that they detect from the mammal will mean that the eggs will drop off and burrow underneath the skin. When they're in the subcutaneous layer, they have everything they need. They're protected from predators, they've got warmth from the body, and they've got food on tap.
For about 5 to 12 weeks, this botfly is going to mature inside Vanessa's head, eating little pieces of Vanessa until it's ready to burst out and become the next disgusting stage of its life.
Before Vanessa's new friend became one of these, she decided to get it out. But how do you stop a botfly from messing with your head?
To get rid of a botfly larvae, you have to cover its breathing holes.
The option she chose is pretty smart. It's having a piece of tape on your head because the botfly still needs to breathe. And this piece of tape effectively cut off the oxygen supply to the botfly, killed it, and then she could go in with the tweezers and pull it out.
Okay, steady, steady. This stage of removal is dangerous. And always seek medical attention if you think you have a botfly in your head.
By messing around with it, trying to get the larvae out and potentially leaving some of its body in there, you could create an infection.
The moment of truth. You should probably look away now.
Just if you feel resistance, don't keep pulling.
No, don't. No, okay, look.
Oh, God, that
No,
hurts.
don't look. Look, don't look.
Ow.
Oh, God.
He's out?
No.
Human 1, botfly 0. Our experts love it when normal activities turn into amazing scientific experiments, especially when they happen in unlikely places, like our number 6. This is Gavin and Dan, who decided to shoot a few rounds underwater.
Guns work underwater the same way they work above water. You've got gunpowder inside the bullet, which is waterproof, and the firing pin collides with that, causes the gunpowder to ignite, and this explosion, all the energy, produces huge amounts of hot exhaust gases. They expand, they force the bullet out of the gun.
Thanks to an extremely high-speed camera, we can enjoy their mind-blowing results. But why didn't the bullet hit the pool wall?
Underwater, they barely make 2 meters. It's about 6 feet.
If you fire a bullet on land, there is hardly any resistance to slow that bullet down, but in water, it's 800 times more dense than air.
They're traveling 1,000th of the distance they normally would because there's so much resistance underwater.
But wait, how are these bizarre bubbles forming?
As the bullet leaves the gun, you get an area of high pressure in front of the bullet, and at the back of the bullet, you get an area of low pressure, a vacuum, really.
And in that partial vacuum, the water suddenly boils a tiny bit. It evaporates and creates this small cloud of gas.
So you have an area of low pressure, and the water around it pushes in onto that area of low pressure. The momentum of that happening, it squeezes the gas tighter and tighter and tighter until the gas becomes so pressurized that it explodes out again.
And this oscillates backwards and forwards, and you can see the bubbles getting bigger and smaller until eventually all the energy dissipates and they disappear completely.
So far in our countdown of the internet's best science-fueled madness, we've seen our greatest hits complete circuits, balance on tight ropes, and play with water. And as we spin into the top 5, the hits get more epic and cooler.
-100 Fahrenheit.
At Outrageous Acts of Science, we love fearsome animals. At number 5, we have crocodile safari guide Wilkie Asaba, who became famous when this video of a feeding demonstration fail hit the web, scoring nearly 500,000 views.
And I'm thinking this guy's out of his mind, right? And especially when he gets stuck in the mud, I'm sure the crocodile's going to eat him.
I knew from before what the crocodile is gonna try to do. That day was like a normal day for us another day in the office. It wasn't too close. It wasn't too close.
Yeah, sure. Why not? Well, anyway, he escaped with his limbs attached. So why didn't the crocodile eat Wilkie instead of the bait?
Crocodiles could pretty much go for any prey, but it takes a lot of energy to do that, and they only do it if they're very hungry. This guide understands these crocodiles, and crocodiles have an ability to remember. They can learn what's going on. So it's easier for it to know that this small morsel will come every day than to use a lot of energy when it's not particularly hungry to try and attack the guide.
So if the crocodile was hungry, would Wilkie have been on the menu?
Crocodiles can run 16 kilometers an hour, which is 10 miles an hour. And they have about 70 sharp interlocking teeth. So it would have grabbed him in a second and done what it does.
Don't feed the crocodiles. it's always a bad idea.
How on earth did they manage to get this to do that?
Meet Craig Zern and Jim Stratton from Purdue University in Indiana, who shot their way into our number 4 spot with their ping pong bazooka.
The can is ridiculously fun. It's addictive.
Wow, but how can a ping pong ball do this?
Ping pong balls don't normally get up to these kinds of speeds because of air resistance. These students have tried to get rid of as much air as possible by creating a vacuum inside the tube.
So they've created a vacuum to make the ball go as fast as it can. But what actually propels it?
They create a pressure chamber of really highly pressured air behind the ping pong ball. When that pressure chamber is released, the air has to squeeze through a tiny nozzle, and that accelerated air is what pushes the ping pong ball through the chamber and out to destroy the bat.
They've used compressed air to accelerate a ping pong ball through a vacuum and reach incredible speeds. So just how fast is this baby moving?
At that moment of impact, that ping pong ball was traveling at 1,300 kilometers per hour. That's 800 miles per hour.
Okay, that's faster than the speed of sound, which is why this ping pong ball smashes its way into our greatest hits. Coming up next, it's time for the top 3 greatest hits on Outrageous Acts of Science. Welcome back. So far, our greatest hits have given you some spectacular science. They've used vacuums to turn ping pong balls supersonic, chemistry to launch sparrows, and physics to shoot underwater. But it's time for the best of the best as we enter our top 3.
Estamos en el Polo Sur geográfico, a 73,5 bajo cero más o menos.
Meet 36-year-old physicist Carlos Pobes from Spain. He's taking part in the crazy tradition known as the 300 Club.
It's called the 300 Club because to be a member, you need to experience 300 degrees of temperature range in close succession in time. But importantly, you have to do it naked.
I love this clip. This is one of my favorite clips because I'd never heard of the 300 Club, and now that I have, I want to do it.
So, is being part of the cool club not so hot for your health?
Carlos starts out in a sauna, which is about 200 degrees Fahrenheit or 93 degrees Celsius. His blood vessels are going to dilate so that about 10 to 15 times as much blood ends up at the surface of his skin. And that's to keep him cool in the sauna. But the same blood that keeps him cool in the sauna is going to keep him warm when he goes outside into the minus 100 degree Fahrenheit weather.
We're naked! We're naked! Minus 100 Fahrenheit!
Can't stay out there too long, but it's critical that it's dry because the air is a poor conductor of heat, and this means that it's not going to take that heat away from his body too quickly. Carlos has a window of about 5 minutes, and frostbite will start to set in. This is potentially devastating to the human body.
La peor parte es este escalón, aunque hemos tallado antes escalones.
If Carlos slips and falls, he's going to come into contact with minus 100 degree Fahrenheit snow, and that could give him frostbite pretty quickly. He also doesn't want to breathe in too much of the air outside. That's why he's not running. That'll cool him down faster. So he's doing what he needs to stay decently warm as he goes out, calmly walks around the South Pole, and then returns inside.
Thought the South Pole would be a pretty lonely, desolate place, but now that I know there's tons of happy naked people running around, I'm in. I'll go.
It was awesome. Unbelievable.
Justin, Alex, and Steven just missed our top spot for making Virginia's answer to the Vomit Comet, the Centrifury. It's a game based on stamina and the ability to last longer than your opponent while being spun very, very quickly.
What they're going to do is they're going to play the game, and they're going to hold down the 2 buttons.
First person to let go for either nausea or they just can't handle the stress, they're the ones to lose.
And it speeds up to a faster pace as they hold on longer and longer. Eventually it tops out at 5.2 Gs.
So this grown-up merry-go-round is a game designed to make its riders very dizzy. But what actually happens when you're spinning?
So the players have a velocity of about 24 kilometres an hour, which is about 15 miles an hour. Now, this may not sound like a great deal of speed, but actually it produces a really large force on their bodies. And the reason is the force is proportional to 1 divided by the radius, and that's the distance from the centre of the disc out to where the player is. Now, if that radius is very large, the force you're going to feel is very small. Here, though, the distance from the centre of the disc out to where the player is quite small. And this means the force in their bodies is going to be really large.
So as you get faster and faster, the G-forces on you will increase. Eventually, the blood pools in the back of your head. And so a lot of things happen then. Your eyes can't see as well. You lose your visual acuity.
Now, if the gravitational forces on your body get so high that your heart can't pump the blood up to your brain, you basically pass out. And we see this with kind of fighter pilots and astronauts. It's called G-LOC, gravity-induced loss of consciousness.
It makes you sick.
One thing that's interesting about this machine is the person that throws up and their competitor are the safest people from the vomit. Everybody else standing around the machine is the one that gets sprayed.
From homemade suits to birthday suits, our greatest hits have been action-packed and awe-inspiring.
Ow.
But we finally reached our final video. Prepare yourself for our #1. Yes, our scientists' unanimous vote for the best video shows a Shaolin monk doing something unbelievable with a needle, a pane of glass, and a balloon.
I've seen a lot of videos, but there's no doubt in my mind that this is #1.
Meet our greatest hit of them all, Shifushi Yanshu, who has studied to be a Shaolin monk since the age of 6. And he's about to blow your mind, so watch carefully. Yes, you did just see a man throw a needle through a pane of glass and burst a balloon.
Is this real or is this magic?
I'm still at a bit of a loss, really. It's so puzzling. It's so impressive.
I wasn't convinced that he'd really done it. As a material scientist, I find it very weird.
But we like weird, so we set up an ultra-high-speed camera on our ultra-high-speed monk to find out exactly what's happening.
用这个针穿玻璃的时候，你的脑子一定要心平气和，不要就是所有的就是脑子里杂事啊。
Well, that's the philosophy anyway. So let's see it in action. Now, with a normal camera, it's impossible to see what's going on. So let's see what our high-speed camera captured. And there it is. The needle rockets through the glass. Amazing.
Yes!
But now that we've seen it happen, what exactly is happening?
The speed that he's throwing it. He's throwing it at 150 kilometers an hour. That's nearly 100 miles an hour. That's how fast it leaves his hand. That is at the edges of what you think a human is capable of. To get through the glass, you need a really, really big pressure. And pressure is force divided by area. We know he's got immense force with that needle. We also know the area is tiny. That means he's creating this huge pressure. That is enough to burst through the glass and out the other side. It's incredible.
But why doesn't the glass shatter?
Glass, despite all appearances, is not actually a normal solid. It's what's called an amorphous solid. And this means that when it gets hit by a needle, it doesn't immediately transfer that force across the whole plane. It means it can be focused and stay quite localized.
And if you're thinking of trying this at home, please don't. It took Shifushi Yanshu a lot of practice.
这个就是真穿玻璃是我练了15年。
As party tricks go, that one wipes the floor with anything I've ever seen.
For Shifu's dedication to shattering science, our scientists have crowned him the king, the cream of the crop, and the bee's knees. Yes, Shifu, you pegged the needle and are the greatest hit of Season 2. So as we wrap up Season 2, there's time for a last salute to all the show-offs. mothers of invention, daredevils, freaks of nature,
It's freaking me out.
and human lab rats from across planet Internet.
I'm a unicorn.
You've shown us the very best of backyard science. Boom!
Oh my god.
Thanks for watching, and until next time on Outrageous Acts of Science.
Do not attempt this at home.